Hello and welcome everyone to this Blender tutorial. In this tutorial I'm gonna focus on Blender, but with the Thememaker toolkit in mind, which means that there are gonna be some restrictions. I'll mention them when we get to them. I use a lot of hotkeys to make sure that you can follow everything. I'm gonna put on the screencast keys, which means that if I press a key or use a mouse button, you can actually see which mouse button and which key. And that way I hope you can follow it a little bit more. When I'm gonna use something new or something important, I'll try to mention the key as well. But as we get further, I won't always call out the key again, and if you don't remember what it was, you can actually see it. I will also put in a link in the description to a nice chart which has all the important and most used hotkeys. It's very useful. Keep it with you when you're modeling. It will be very tricky in the beginning. It's quite a tricky program, so I hope that I can get you a bit on the way, but it takes a lot of practice and getting used to the software itself. Alright, so let's start. First lesson. Get reference images. We're gonna build this cabinet, and it's just very useful to have images with you, so you can actually see what you're building. And you can also see certain details that you would normally miss if you just start modeling. So let's get rid of everything here and start. Selection in Blender is different. You actually select using the right mouse button. In this case I want to select everything, and there are a couple of ways to do that. The first and most simple way to select everything is pressing A. I pressed A twice now. That's because I already selected something. If you already have something selected and you press A, it will actually deselect everything you're currently selecting. And when you press A again, it will select everything. Another way to select stuff is by using B for the box selection. You drag it over it and it will select everything within the box. And the third most used way, I think, is with C. And C is actually sort of brush, which will select everything you drag over it. And it will also add stuff to the selection if you already have something selected. So for example, if I have this one selected and I press C, then I can actually add these to the selection just by pressing the left mouse button. So select everything, press X for delete, and select delete. Now we can get started. There was already a cube, but we're just gonna bring that one back by pressing Shift A, selecting mesh, selecting cube. And what I want to do with this one is get it up a bit, because currently if you export it like this, it will be partly into the floor, as you can see here as well, and we don't want that. So we're gonna move it up. We're gonna move by pressing G. If you just press G, then you will see here the current location of the cube, that it will go everywhere, and that's really hard to get it just up. We can fix that by pressing G and pressing Z for the Z axis. Now it only moves over the Z axis. The most precise way to move stuff is by pressing numbers. You can guess it where you should probably put it, but if you can see here, the dimensions are currently 2, which means that if I want to put it on the floor, it has to be moved up for half the dimensions. So 1. So if I press G, Z, and 1, it will go up 1, and when you press enter, it will actually be there. Final thing to do to actually make it not inside the floor when you export it because if you export it like this, it will still be put inside the floor, and that's because the origin point or pivot point currently is in the center of the cube, and Planet Coaster will take the pivot point or the origin point. Blender will refer to it as the origin point. We'll actually grab that point and put it on the floor at that point. Meaning exporting it like this will actually put it in the floor like this. So to get it properly on the floor, you have to move the origin point, and there are a couple of ways to do that. The way I use most is using the 3D cursor. The 3D cursor you can actually see here. You can move it all over the viewport, but you can also just put in the numbers 0, tap, 0, tap, 0, enter. And if I move the origin point to the 3D cursor, then it will actually be put on the floor because the 3D cursor is currently on the floor. The hotkey for that is Ctrl Shift Alt C, as you can see here, and press origin to 3D cursor. This might seem like an advanced trick, but you actually use it quite often, so that's why I wanted to show you. You're gonna use the 3D cursor a lot. Maybe not at the beginning, to be honest, but you will find it more useful over time. Alright, we're gonna actually set the units used in this scene to meters. Now the cube is actually 2 by 2 by 2 meters, and that's a bit much for a cabinet. I'm gonna make the width about 1.4 and the depth, so this 2.6, and the height to about 1 meter. That kind of looks like this in the very core. Alright, let's start with the drawer. To help get the right dimensions for the drawer, I'm gonna use a background image. That way you can actually put a reference image behind it, which will make some things easier. In this case it's too big, but we can change that by changing the size and the location. Now every image of course has different settings. In this case it's -0.005, 0.550, and for the size it's 1.525. Now you can see that that it lines up with the cube we have so far. Now let's start with the drawer. We can actually use this now. You can click here with the left mouse button. That will change the cursor, the 3D cursor's location. And that's useful because whenever you create a new object, so with Shift A and then Mesh Cube, we add a cube, and new object will always be placed on the 3D cursor. So now we can scale it down using S and try to get as close as possible. But to really refine it, we're gonna go into edit mode, tap, then select the vertice selection, and with box selection on B, I'll select these two. Or it may seem to because I'm in orthographic view, but there are actually 4, so the whole left side of this cube. And this way I can place it using G and pressing X right on the correct location. Same goes for this one, the bottom, and the top. Now just get as close as you can. It doesn't have to be on the millimeter exact, but this is good enough. This will work. I'm gonna open up another reference image where the drawers are open. That's where you can see that the shape we have here is actually just the front of the drawer. So for now we're just gonna build the front of the drawer and then extrude the back out of it. You'll see what I mean in a second. Because it's the front of the drawer, we also have to get the y-axis correct. Now, as you can see here, it's really very small, so that's what we're gonna do. And to keep things organized, we're gonna remove the background image, but not completely. We just want to change when you see it. So if I put it on the front view, numpad 1, then you see it, and when you go to the top, numpad 7, then you don't see it. This will make things a lot more clear. Then we put it a bit in the front, because that's where the front of the drawer is. And we'll probably have to change a bit later on, but for now this is fine, the location. And now we're gonna extrude stuff out of it. To do that, we're gonna need to cut first. We're gonna cut into this shape so that we can get a line here, a line here, a line here, and a line there. That will make a nice clean shape, but also have the possibility to extrude shapes out of it. So let's do that. Ctrl R is cut. You can see that the pink line is where it will cut. And the first selection you make is whether it's vertical or horizontal. Now we'll start with this one, so we make it vertical. And when you click, you can actually drag it to where you want it. No, we want it over here. We do the same for the top side and the bottom and the right side. I'm gonna go to perspective view to see it a bit more clear. Then we're gonna extrude out of it. You can see here that the middle part is a bit more pushed in. So we can either push this in or extrude this one out. Seeing as it doesn't really matter which one you do, this one is easier because you only have to select one. We're going back to top view and orthographic view, so you can get real precise. And well, I'll just show you what happens first. If you press E for extrude, you extrude the face out of it, which will create extra geometry. In this case, we want to go inside, like this. I'm all for as few chaos as possible, so we're just gonna hide this one. I'm gonna select it, press H, now it's gone, so that we can really focus on the drawer. Now you can see now, and you can see it from the top as well, it's extruded inside, and you can change the thickness of it. I think this is fine. You might have noticed that I'm in full screen here. That's by pressing Ctrl arrow up. And if I don't need this at the moment, or anything other than just this view, then I can, with the mouse inside that view, I can Ctrl arrow up, and you have just the view that you selected. In this case, that's the 3D view. You can do that with any view. So if I just want to see this image, Ctrl arrow up, you just go inside here. Okay, so we're gonna make a few more cuts. That's to make room for this notch and just generally the back. To do that, we're gonna cut on both sides, and this cut is to make sure that the back side is not equal to the front. was gonna say we're gonna do it on the other side, but if you wanna keep this as symmetrical as possible, it's better to use a mirror modifier. So that's what we're gonna use. With models like these, you use modifiers a lot because there's a lot of symmetry. So let's do that first. We're gonna make sure that it's on the center. So on the x-axis is it's 0. Then we're gonna select all the other faces on the left side and delete them. Now we only got half left. But if we use a modifier, the mirror modifier, then suddenly we got it back again. And the great thing about this is when you change something on the right side, it will also be changed on the left side. So now this cut is identical to the cut over here. Then we're gonna make a few more cuts, and that's to have this notch already. So we're gonna actually make 2. There. So now we're gonna extrude this. And we're gonna extrude all of these faces. Now you can just select them, but you can also use the brush selection, which you can change using the mouse scroll how big your selection is. So now I'm going to just select these, extrude them out. For now this is fine, we can change it later. And we're going to extrude a little bit more, so we got a backside. That means that we're going to extrude this one in. And now we're just going to have to delete these faces. And there we go. Well, it seems that the draw is already a bit small, but if you bring back the cabinet, we can actually see if that's the case. You can do that in 2 ways, because we hit it. You can just click the viewport visibility for that one. Or if you just want everything back, which is the case in this case, you press Alt-H and you just unhide everything. So now we can see if the draw is the right size. We can clearly see it's not. So we're just gonna select the backside and drag it using G and Y all the way to the back. Alright, now I'm gonna make some cuts in the cabinet itself so the drawer fits in. Going in edit mode. And we're gonna cut, and we're gonna cut obviously on the top side of the drawer. And on the bottom side of the drawer. There we go. And then for the vertical as well. Now I like to be as detailed as possible, but as you might have noticed, there's this rail thingy. I'm not gonna do that. That's just too much, and you won't notice it in game, so that's fine. Now, same as with the drawer. Wait, I think I didn't place it right. No, I did not. That's the right side. So we're gonna extrude it inside in the cabinet and make it as long as the drawer, like that. There we go. Obviously we need more drawers, but I'm gonna do that when this drawer is completely done, including materials and textures, because then I can just duplicate this one and we have 3 drawers. But if we want to texture it correctly, the cabinet has to have those cuts already, so we're just gonna put those in. We're just gonna compare it to the top one, and we can see that it's about here and about here. Just make sure that the cuts are inside the front of the drawer, so you don't see the cuts when the drawer is closed. Same one for this one and this one. And then we're gonna extrude those. We want to put those on the same distance. So to make sure that they're all on the same distance, we're gonna select all three of them. So that's all three backsides. Then going to orthographic view, the top view. Then scale on the y-axis, and then 0. When you scale different faces or different vertices on 0, it will take the average and put them all on there. So now we can put them all on the same distance. So next up is the cabinet doors. I'm gonna do the same thing as with the drawers. So we're gonna create a separate object, create a cube, scale it down a bit, open up in edit mode, and drag the sides to their correct distance. Then make sure that the Y thickness is also correct. I think it's fair to say that the thickness of the drawer fronts is probably the same as the thickness from the doors. So what we can do to copy that exactly is by going into going into edit mode, go to global and get the correct axis. Go back into the other one and copy that by pressing Ctrl V. Then go back to this one again for the front side. Copy that, Ctrl C, just hover over it and Ctrl C. And select those and hover it and Ctrl V. Now it's identical. So just with the drawers we're gonna make some cuts to extrude. One here, one there. One there, and the last one, there we go. Alright, now we're gonna extrude that one in again. Same as with the drawers, I'm gonna copy this door when this one is completely done, but I am gonna make the cuts already in the cabinet. So that's around here. Basically on top of the door. Same goes for this side. And on top. And on the bottom. Now I have to make sure that I grab the correct faces. So I changed to with C to solid viewport shading in between seeing which I need to pick, because if I just select it like this, there's a high possibility that I grab the back one, and I don't want that. So if you change it to solid before selecting, you will always pick the first one it sees. You can't pick the ones in the back. Same goes for brush selection. If I just select these using the brush selection, I will grab all of them. That's not what I want. So when I go into brush selection, press C to get it to solid, and then you can select them, and you will see that you only grab the front ones. I need to add this one, shift right click. And there we go. So now we can extrude that in. Pretty much the same as the drawers, more or less. And there we go. Now let's add a little bit more detail. I want to add this notch. So we're going to cut again. Cut it over there. And because we need to go inside, it's also better to also cut it on the exterior, so that you can add some thickness to it. Then we're gonna delete these. So that's where the notch will be. Delete those. Now we're just gonna zoom in by pressing numpad period. You can actually see what's going on. And I'm just gonna move this one about 5 centimeters, so 0.05. Same for over here. But minus 0.5, 0.05. And this vertex doesn't exist yet, so we're gonna create it. Also by extruding, but we're just gonna extrude this vertex. And we're gonna extrude it up to here. So we're gonna E on the y-axis and about there, but like we did with the doors and the drawers, I'm gonna copy this and paste it there. And now we can fill this up again. So we're gonna select the vertices that we need to fill and press F. Now I need to create this vertex as well. And this one. And this one. So we're just gonna do this all at the same time. Extrude it over the y-axis. And because I still haven't copied anything else yet, it should still be in there. So Ctrl V. And then you got the same distance. Fill this one up by selecting the 4 vertices and F. Same for the last one over here, and then close it all up. There we go. If we want to increase that thickness, we can just select them all. Yeah, that's a little bit more impact. I want to also add something that you see over here. And I'm not gonna exactly copy it, but I'm just gonna build something a little like this, so a little shape that's extruded out of there. So we're gonna go to the side, make a couple cuts. You can increase the amount of cuts by using the scroll wheel. So if you scroll up from 1, you get 2, and so on. I'm gonna make 3. And like I said, when you don't have solid, so when you have the wireframe on and you brush select something, you will select all of them, and that's what we want now. And then we can just put it out a bit, and this one, that one. We're gonna put this one a little bit back again, and we're gonna make it a bit round. We're gonna do that by using bevel on this edge. So we're gonna go into the edge selection and select all these, and then we're gonna Control B. Then you drag it a bit up and you scroll once or twice. I think one is more than enough. And now it's rounded. Now add a little bit more detail. I'm gonna select these and extrude it out. Because we can't mirror this because of this asymmetry here, we have to select both of these if we want to keep it as symmetrical as possible. So scale it down a little bit, move it down a little bit, and push it in a little bit. And just rotate it a little bit as well. Move it a bit back. Something like this. Select that one and that one. Move it a bit up. Bevel. And same for this, that one. And this and that one. There we go. I think that's good enough for the details of the cabinet itself. All I wanted to add now are the handles. And I think then the geometry is done. So let's do that. We're just going to create another object again. This time a cylinder. You can change some of the aspects here. If you create a default cylinder, it will have 32 vertices. So that means 32 faces around it. That's way too much for this smaller object. So I think 6 is actually enough. Scale it down, all the way down to the center of the handle. And then I'm just gonna extrude and scale. And place it. Extrude, scale, place it. Extrude, scale. And for the final part, I just want to extrude it and rotate it. I want to make sure that I rotate it correctly. So I'm gonna rotate it on 45. As you can see in the left bottom, that's what I typed, minus 45. Move it a bit. Extrude it. Rotate it minus 45 again. And place it. Now this is too big on the y-axis. So I'm gonna scale it down a little bit on the y-axis. And then I'm gonna remove it from the middle. And just like with the drawers, I'm gonna mirror it. But instead of the x-axis, use the z-axis. Now you can scale it correctly over the image, and I think that should be it. There it is. Just with the doors and the drawers, I'm just going to duplicate this when it's needed. I'm going to do the same for the drawers. I'm going to use a cylinder again, rotate it on its side, scale it all the way down, and add one in the middle. delete one side, add a mirror on the Z axis again. And scale it, place it how I want it. I think that's fine. Then I still need to add another cut here and here. So I can add the attachment. That's all skewered and stuff, but if you remember from before, we can S for scale, Y and 0, and it will even it out. Then bring it all the way to the front, so it's actually on the drawer. You can see the notch here, so that's where it should be placed. And there we go. Now there's one more thing I want to do, and that's on the front of the drawers and of the doors. I want to scale this a little bit down, and I mean the notch here. And so that's because we can get this bevel in here. So we're going to scale it down, but if you scale it down exactly like this, you're going to see that it's also going to open up in the middle. That's not what we want. That's this option for the clipping. Clipping means that it, when it's at the center, it won't move from the center. So if we scale it down now, you see that it will stay in the middle. So now we're just gonna get the background image up again and scale it so it's on the inside of the bevel. We're gonna do the same for the doors. Now this one is mirrored, so we can just scale, and that's correct for the horizontal, but that means that the vertical is a bit off because that's shorter. So we're gonna scale on the Z axis, and there we go. So I think that's the modeling done, and that's also part 1. In the next part we're gonna use materials and textures, also on the right way for the Thememaker toolkit, of course. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and if you want to support me, please go to my Patreon website and see what you can do. And thank you all, and I'll see you next time. See ya!